Welcome to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast, where we interview the best and the brightest business and real estate leaders. Our mission is to inspire and help 1,000 entrepreneurs to start and succeed in real estate and entrepreneurship. We will give you the exact playbook to succeed in your business through the experience of those who blaze the path. We're bringing the what's working today directly to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast. My guest today is Jared Prevost. Jared, welcome to the show, man.
You even pronounced my last name right, bro. We're off to a good start.
I do this intentional thing every show where I don't ask, hey, am I saying this right? And then I just do it live like we just did and then see if I got it right. So far, I did this 4 shows in a row. So far, I'm 4 for 4.
Let's go. Saying. That's hype, dude. I'd be like 2 for 4 at best. I suck at that type of stuff.
I'm super pumped to have you today. I think it's really cool. You got into real estate in 2020. You did some wholesaling. You worked in a mobile home park. You helped with some development stuff. You ultimately landed on being one of the better, most well-known hard money lenders in the local Tampa Bay area. I mean, people love working with you for, obviously because you know what you're doing and You're fast. So that's incredible. But I want to know more about like your background prior to how you got into the whole real estate space and how it evolved into where you're at today. And I know you do some stuff on the tech side too. I want to hear about that as well.
It all ties together in my origin story. So I grew up in this like Hallmark style town. And I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't even know being an entrepreneur was a thing until I was probably about 20 years old. I thought like if somebody was owned a company, it was like a job, like you were the CEO, whatever. So I go to college and both my parents are in medicine. They've never filed an LLC in their life. Never exposed to that, right? And my freshman year, I get this econ professor. The dude isn't even 30 years old yet. And he's a millionaire through real estate. And just like super, super smart, super charming, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And so I end up signing up for every class this dude offers. Get into econ. He tells me, Jared, you got to go into finance, man. That's what you want to do. So I'm like, all right, cool. Finance is good. Finance is good. And so this guy kind of becomes my mentor in college. And this general interest in personal finance results in me launching my first business, a money coaching business, which is where this whole tech side business comes into play that we can talk about later if you want. But what ultimately ended up happening, man, is I interned with a real estate developer in my hometown in college, and I basically built models on Excel. So, I'm a freak in the sheets certified, right? So I did that. But then after college, I've always been a mountains guy. So I go out, I live in the woods in Idaho, leading high schoolers in a conservation corps. And I'm doing that all summer. And I was like, dude, I don't want to live in Michigan. I want to live in the mountains. I was born in the mountains. Like, I'm ready to come back. So I'm like, man, Boise's cool, but it's really hot. It's actually not that close to real mountains. It's like all foothills. And I find Spokane. I was like, man, this is incredible. I'm going to move out here after I graduate college, which was spring 2021. And while I'm out there, I was actually working on a project building fake beaver dams for the University of Idaho. I get one call from this developing company in Marquette, and they're like, hey, we do have a job for you. You should come up here and like lead off these big projects we're working on. It's like, dude, that's awesome. Then I get a call from my old professor. He's like, hey, we're going to syndicate real estate. I just bought a mansion in downtown Grand Rapids for like $1.2 million on seller finance. You should come be my business partner. I'm going to pay you $30,000 a year. No benefits, no anything. I was like, dude, sign me up. So as soon as I get back from Idaho, like a week later, I'm down in Grand Rapids. And that, Adam, was the first time I learned about how people really are behind the scenes in real estate. Because that guy ended up being a bit of a shyster. For a while, dude, he convinced me to rent one of his houses. That was not a good deal. Like after I really learned what I was doing, I went back and ran the numbers. So I was like, dude, this was not a good fix and flip. He ends up burning it, right? And he needed to rent it for way more than market rent to be able to actually refi it, right? He's like, Jared, you should do this. It's a good deal. And I was managing short-term rentals for him. He's like, dude, you can just live in one room and rent the other rooms. And I was like, this guy's name was Alex. I was like, Alex, but it's November in Michigan and COVID was like a really big deal at this point. Like COVID is surging. Do you think I'm going to be able to rent these rooms? He's like, yeah, dude, don't worry about it. That doesn't really matter. So I was actually paying more in rent than I was making from him. And I got literally like 2 bookings in an entire month. So
wow.
Yeah, that was like origin story. That's why I came down to Tampa, started working for Nick Camrata and his wholesale company. Cause I literally got like, dude, I was working like a dog, no friends, no social life, not much of a network.
Up in Michigan, that you were working like a dog. Okay, so this guy's like basically your professor at college.
Yeah, he was my professor. I love the dude in college. He was like a huge inspiration.
What school was this?
FSU, aka Ferris State University.
Ferris State, yeah, a well-known college in Michigan. Actually, a good college in Michigan. So that's cool. I mean, I'm an Eastern Michigan graduate, so.
I was going to say good is relative. The graduation rate when I went there was like 44% or something. It was free. So I was like, I'm here for it.
Well, you went to college. You did finance. That's worth something. Okay. So you get into this house. So you're in Michigan, you kind of bounce around, do some stuff in Idaho, come back.
Yep.
And, you find out this guy's a shyster. He put you in this thing. He's got you overpaying for it. You can't Airbnb it. How in the world did Tampa come into play, and how did you find Nick?
Yeah.
By the way, Nick's kind of he's in our circle here in Tampa. He's a wholesaler, flipper, creative finance guy locally. They do deals in Tampa. Great dude, great company, 27 properties.
Yeah. So here's where it kind of gets even more interesting. So like I said, I didn't really have a network at that point, which is funny now because that's really what I'm known for, I think, as much as anything else. So I really only had 2 other friends that I trusted that were in real estate. Well, these 2 friends were best friends with my older brother growing up. And my older brother, he passed away in an ATV accident when he was like 15 years old. And so Nick and Gabe, they were like kind of older brother figures to me because they were so tight with my older brother. And I hadn't talked to Nick in many, many years because he moved out of Marquette like shortly thereafter, but I was tight with Gabe. He's like, dude, just come to Tampa. They had done, this was spring 2022. So May hadn't hit yet. The market hadn't shifted. And Gabe's calling me up. He's like, hey, we got another contract today. And they were averaging like 40K on their contracts at that point. So here I was literally losing money working all the time. Like it was only through a couple of literal like God miracles that I ended up breaking even from my time in Grand Rapids. But I was just like not enjoying life at all. And Gabe's like, yo, dude, we just made $100,000 this week. I was like, all right, screw this. I got on a flight, went down to Tampa the very next week. And what's crazy, man, that's the week the market just completely shifted. Rates went up, everything changes. And we didn't do a deal after that I didn't get paid for 4 months.
Yeah,
so dude.
You went from breaking even to working for no pay. You're killing it at this point.
Yeah, dude, believe me.
If you ever want to bring your talents over to me and be free labor, do a bunch of great work and work like a dog. It may not pay you. Like, if you want to go another round of that, just hit me up.
I'd like to think I've outgrown the knowledge piece of that, where like it was fine while I was learning, you know. So yeah, I did that. I worked for Nick K in acquisitions for about 1.5 years. He taught me, probably 70% of what I know in real estate right now. But ultimately, man, like my skill sets and what I love did not line up with wholesale at all. Like I do not have the personality type to be running acquisitions in wholesale. So it kind of ultimately led to me buying a flip. Like I kind of abruptly quit working with Nick because I got frustrated and he wanted me to cold call all the time. And I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. So I start my own wholesale company, trying to sling deals in Spokane virtually and buy a flip at the same time. And
I remember that.
This was like, I just joined James Lascara's EIMG group, and I hadn't yet learned about stacking risks. And now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, that was incredibly not smart at all. Totally emotional decision. This flip does not go well. We end up losing 16 grand. Like, we run out of money to finish the project. I have to borrow from my parents, who are not entrepreneurs, right? So it wasn't cool.
They weren't thrilled to just write you a check for what they probably perceived as a dumb move.
They definitely perceived it as a dumb move, and they told me that. But they made annualized return like 20% on their money, and we did exit the project, and it worked out okay. But yeah, that was also like the money I was spending on my reno was also my marketing budget for my new wholesale company that hadn't done a deal yet. And of course, man, like, if you can't tell, I've kind of been beaten down on my story. I think I'm a slow learner, but the first deal that I lock up, I almost get into a lawsuit on. I almost have to sue the seller for trying to keep. I wrote him a $1,500 basically loan to get the contract, and yeah, man. So it was a lot of pain before actually AJ Weed kind of was like, dude, you just need to get into hard money. And that was February 1st of this year.
Which is such a smart move. You know what, though? You're a way better hard money lender because you went through this evolution of like this whole Airbnb thing, renting it, coming down there, like learning acquisitions, like learning sales.
Yep.
And then you go do a flip on your own. So now you see what not right looks like. You're like, I clearly know when it's not a good deal. And you learn the Tampa market probably better than most people because you're doing acquisitions, you're underwriting a zillion different properties while you're doing that. And your skill set's like perfect, man. You've got a finance background. You've got some wholesaling and flipping experience. And all the while you build this network of local people in the Tampa area. It like couldn't have happened in a better order, actually.
It's one of those things where it's like, it really is like a God thing. Like, through the whole process, I'm like, dude, this sucks. Why does everything that I try like fail? I'm like, I'm talented. I'm smart. Like, I'm good on the phone. I shouldn't, like, I just can't figure it out. And then you get to the other side of it and you're like, all right, this actually makes sense. And I'm grateful for basically all the pain and all the lessons that I went through, because when you look back on it, it's like, wow, there was a plan. This all makes sense now. And to your point, I've seen how things are done right and how they've been done wrong. I know this market like the back of my hands. It really makes me a very, very well-equipped lender, specifically for Tampa, which is why I only really try to do deals in Tampa and Miami, because Miami has really nice loan sizes. But, my expertise is definitely Tampa Bay.
What is your passion? Like, what do you love doing? Because like you're probably a more detail-oriented numbers guy. You like the spreadsheets, I assume, just based on your college upbringing. You don't like sales, even though you did it. You did pretty well.
Well, here's the thing. I love sales, but there's very different types of sales. So the thing that I'm really passionate about is almost like relational mentorship, coaching type sales, right? So let's just take wholesale on one hand. All right, I'm going to work like a dog and follow up with this person. I really don't have a lot of they don't want to learn, right? Sellers don't want to learn. 99% of them don't want to learn. Totally closed off. You're just hitting them, pulling out every line, everything that you know how to do to frame it, position it, create scarcity, all this stuff to get a deal one time. That's it. And that just drained me, man. But
very transactional. It's very transactional.
Exactly. It is. That's the nature of that business. Now, the dispo side is a little bit different of a story. But when I look at lending, kind of one of my favorite stories right now is I look at each borrower as a potential golden goose, right? Like, if I do everything I possibly can to make sure that you win on any loan I do with you, that one loan turns into 2 loans, turns into 4 loans, turns into 8 loans. And so I've got one borrower borrower. They're actually a pair, Gabriel Villagrasa and Jose Padilla, if you want buyers for any of your deals in Tampa Bay. But those guys came to me, man, and I honestly thought they were wasting my time. Like, I talked to them in maybe March of this year. Like, I knew they didn't know what they were doing. I didn't think that they had the assets and the credit. And I was just like, look, guys, like, come on now. I want to talk to people doing deals. And I ended up talking to Gabriel, and I was like, look, man, I will help you find a good deal, and we'll make sure you get into a really good deal that you'll win on. I'll make sure of it. And so we look at like a dozen deals together, and he finally brings me one where I was like, I like this. Low risk. This is a really good starter deal, good price point. Everything's good to go. And they actually end up selling it for exactly like the exact number that I told them was my opinion of value. And they go ahead, they turn that one project, and then we do two new loans in the past 2 months, both from my weekly deal drop. And so that is just like culminates when you ask about what are you passionate about? Like, dude, there's a guy who came to me where if he hadn't to talk to me, I don't know if he would have been able to get into real estate and have success. And now 6 months later, this dude's exited. He's on his way to exiting 3 flips and made money on all of them. And he's just like unlocked a ton more freedom in his life. And so that kind of thing is just incredibly fulfilling to me. So it's really like the coaching aspect. I do really enjoy underwriting deals. I've built a lot of the spreadsheets and stuff that Rain City uses now, but that's where I get like fired up, is kind of more the coaching type sales.
You know, coaching, like, you know, running 7-figure flipping, obviously, you know that. It's a mastermind with hundreds of investors in it. What I really love about it is it is so fulfilling just to help other people win. That's so cool, man. Like, those guys, they did that deal. It changed their lives. It probably changed their lives forever. Like, yes. They unlocked this. You know, this story is the common story. Person is making meager money, you know, 50 grand a year, 70 grand a year, which for some people that's a lot, but that's like meager for the country, right? It's nothing to write home about per se. You do a flip and you make $30,000, $35,000, and it's half of your annual salary. Yeah. Now, maybe it takes you 6 months, so that kind of checks out, but you're thinking like, wow, that could replace my salary. But then you're thinking, what if I did 2 at a time? Or what if I did 1 a month? And then all of a sudden you're like 10xing your salary. And just to help people unlock that, because, you know, you see it, you hear Bigger Pockets, you listen to the podcast, you read the books, but it's not real.
No.
You know, you see the potential, it's not real. You do a deal and your belief system changes completely. You're like, oh my gosh, dude, I just closed. It's the same reason that Nick and those dudes in Tampa were calling you mission. Like, dude, we just closed $100,000 in a week. Like, their lives were changing at that point.
Oh, big time.
The way they thought about money, the way they thought about how to get money. And there's these rules of money that are just different. The fundamentals never change, but these rules of money are fascinating. Like, Bill, my mentor, said this thing one time on stage. He said, money follows speed. And it's like, it really does, because when you make a decision fast, you see an opportunity, you jump on it. Like, you saw an opportunity. You don't always win on those. You jumped on the Airbnb thing. Like, dang, it didn't win, but that helped to build your skill, build your mindset. Then you jumped on the acquisitions thing. You didn't do a deal for 4 months, but eventually you did dozens of deals with Nick. And you're like, okay, this makes money. This makes sense. I see it. I can believe it. And then you become a hard money lender, and you're just stacking these wins.
Totally.
Somebody might say, well, that took you like 4 years, man. It's 2024 and you started in 2020. Right. 4 years is not a long time. Dude. People's perception of how fast success happens is completely uncalibrated because of social media. They're like, oh, I'm going to start doing this thing this year and I'm going to be filthy rich on the beach by December.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work. It just does not work that way. It doesn't work that way.
The other thing too, man, is like, all right, let's think about 4 years. Okay. The institutions of the United States say that, hey, if you want to get like good enough at something that will give you a paper that says you're really good at it, we're going to make you go for 4 years. All right, dude. Well, I think that now I can say in 4 years, I feel like I've earned my bachelor's degree in real estate. Like at this point, there's not a whole lot that you could throw at me that I don't know how to do or I don't know what it is. Like you're always learning. But for the most part, man, like I've got my bachelor's degree. Maybe I don't have my master's yet, but now I'm to the point where like I can earn 6 figures plus a year just from understanding how real estate works, what a deal looks like, helping other people with that, et cetera.
And the crazy thing is like year 1, 0, year 2, 0, year 3. Like the way this works is like year 1, 1. I mean, year 3, 1. Year 4, 7. Right. And then year 5 is like 14. It's this hockey stick compounding thing. And I heard it like 5 years ago. I heard people talking about this, like, you know, it compounds over time. All of a sudden it takes off. And I was like, I need it to be like, I need a win right now. And of course you're getting wins, but how your mind perceives a win like grows. So then you get this massive growth along your journey. If you stay consistent, you don't quit, you keep going. Like you're a great example of consistency and persistence. Of course, you changed industries a little bit, but like you went into the real estate game and figured out where you belong and you didn't just quit. Like most people are like, oh my gosh, I'm losing money on this rental Airbnb. I'm going to move back to mom and dad's. I'm going to go get my master's degree and I'm going to go get a job. Like they quit. Same thing happens. You move down to Tampa, you start working with Nick and team, and you're like 4 months because the whole market just basically went bottom out, double the interest rates. Like, oh my gosh, we didn't close the deal. I'm not making any money. I quit. Like you didn't quit. Why didn't you quit?
There's 2 answers to that question. Why not quit? One, I am like literally just hardwired to, I know that I have to do this. And I've always kind of been terrified of the idea of having a normal job. I thought about in high school, I used to get like anxiety about, dude, I have to work 40 hours a week at like some job that I have to drive to and sit there. I never really understood that because I didn't know what being an entrepreneur was yet. Like, I can't help it, man. I seem to love the suffering, I guess. But the second answer to that question is like, okay, so think about it this way. You go into an opportunity. You don't yet know a lot because you haven't tried and likely failed. So like, let's just take a great example is this flip I lost money on. So we get to the finish line. It sucked, dude. It was terrible for my mental health. Like everything was going wrong. But the house turned out really cute. You know, we sold it really quickly at what I thought we would, et cetera. And my mom goes, she's like, well, now you're never going to do that again, right? And by the way, I also lost like $5,000 on a private money loan around the same time.
Oh,
like,
man.
She's like, so you're never going to do these things again, right? I was like, what are you talking about? Now I've learned what not to do. I'm so much more equipped to do it again. Like it would be foolishness not to do it again. So I wrote another private loan earlier this year and I made a really good return on it, like 20% annualized return. Wasn't worried about it for a second. I just bought a flip. Acquisition price on this was $502,000. So this is not like your South St. Pete frame house, right? Like high price point. We're going to list this thing around $750,000. And dude, as soon as I saw the deal, I was like, I'm buying this. And why? Dude, now I know what I'm doing. Like I had to fail. And the reason I don't quit is because now I'm like, okay, my odds of success before failing was like 30%. After you fail once, your odds of success is like 80%. And then you do another rep and then it's like 90%. Before you know it, like the only time you mess up is when the market changes or you get overconfident or you stack risks. And if you're cognizant of those things that happen to entrepreneurs, like you can kind of, be aware of it and try to avoid it.
Yeah. Can you talk about this concept that you learned of stacking risk and how people might be able to use this model?
This is totally a James thing. I don't know if he learned this from someone else, but that's where I learned it. And so
it was programmed into James, Jared. He's a robot.
Yeah. Not real. It is part of his coding.
It's This automatic risk calculation.
Yeah, exactly. So the thought process kind of goes like this. All right, every single deal you do has risk, right? Like there's nothing that's guaranteed. Even the thing that seems guaranteed, something could come up. All right. So you go into a deal and you need to think about what are the risks, or not even a deal. Like you could say starting a new company, taking on a new job, whatever. And you list out the risks. And most risks, like if you can compensate for it, like it's a flip. Okay, well, I've done this before, so I have the experience. That mitigates it. But every single time you stack a risk, it's like a multiplier of the chances of the deal going south. So for instance, let's quantify this. Deal number one that I did, I bought from a wholesaler that I didn't know, frame house, use a contractor that I hadn't worked with before. I had never borrowed hard money before. I would say that's most of the risks right there. And it needed everything, really. I didn't think that it did, but it basically needed everything. So you're looking at 5 risks right there. And did everything come to bite me in the butt? No, but probably 3 of those 5 risks ended up hurting the project. And I didn't factor that into my projections. All right.
How many levels of risk would you say is appropriate to stack?
That depends. For me right now, like I don't call myself a fix and flipper. I'll do them. But if somebody sends me a fix and flip, I don't want to see a single risk. Like I don't want to see anything that I don't like. Otherwise I'd just be like, oh, I have a buyer for this. Like I have a borrower who would want this. So it depends.
If I sent you a deal today, what would that perfect deal look like that you're like, yes, I'm doing this one myself?
So I was going to get to that. So that's deal number 1, right? First deal. Okay, second deal I do. This one, I get a call scheduled through my Instagram. I'm like, all right, I already love that. I know my conversion is really good through Instagram and I have instant rapport and trust because I've been consistent. And so I get on the phone. This guy's direct to seller. He's telling me he wants to borrow money from me to buy the project. So I know he's not messing around. He holds the contract. He just put it under contract. All right, so let's hear about the deal. It had already passed 2 4-point inspections. Awesome. Unincorporated Pinellas County. Great. You have 2 potential buyers, Airbnb buyers or normal retail. Love that. Buyer pool isn't limited, even though it's a high price point. Not in the flood zone. It's actually in one of the highest elevation areas in Pinellas. Block, 1970. So this is not a super old home. On a slab. So I'm just like, check. Pool home, pool has no problems. I'm just like, I don't know what kind of risk, like anything that would kind of flag a deal for me, busy street, frame, any of these things. I can't pick any of them out. And then I go to underwrite it and I'm like, dude, this is just like a no brainer. That's the type of deal that to me.
What kind of spread did that deal have?
So I think when I underwrote the numbers, worst case scenario, we make $8,000 profit. My like kind of median still pretty conservative. We make $60K. And then my upside, which I think we probably have 20 to 30% chance on. I think we're making about 90 to 100. And I'm talking like net. Excluding taxes, which everybody likes to ignore flipping. But yeah, so that's the other thing, man. Take your worst case scenario. You should be at least breaking even. At least that's me. I want to be hyper conservative because I'm not a fix and flipper. So, I don't want to stack risks. If somebody is in 7-figure flipping, and they're doing 2 or 3 deals a month. It's like, all right. And the market like the back of your hands. It's okay to stack risks because you have something to compensate.
Okay, there's a risk, but my mitigation is X. But that's not, it's really interesting because we had 2 big flippers, 100 plus flips a year in our community. One of them came into a market and ended up like keeping like 70 houses. They were doing probably a couple hundred flips a year. They opened up their West Coast flipper, primarily San Diego, come out to Jacksonville, Florida, Tampa, and go to Nashville. They go multi-market, nationwide almost. Nashville didn't work out for them, but they go into Jacksonville and see a lot of success. They get a lot of deals under contract. They end up just keeping a lot of them. They buy these deals, they end up keeping them. Cash flow deals in Jacksonville, so on and so forth.
Yeah, probably picking them up at 20 grand.
Dirt cheap for sure. And they're putting rehab into them and making them, nice rentals.
Yeah.
July 22 comes around and interest rates double or more than double. So that guy is doing volume flipping, but his margins are small. He's playing a volume game, 20, 25K margins. The other guy is in middle America, like Utah or something, flipping 100 houses, no assets, like not buying assets to hold, no cash flow, just flipping. Ends up in a second market on the East Coast. He has partners up out there, doesn't really have the same kind of control systems and stuff, like highly leveraged July 22. That one goes down. The one that bought assets had enough equity and resources to not completely tank. Talking about this is a friend of mine. Goes from a $20 million net worth to like a $2 million net worth.
Dude, yeah, that's I don't know if you're
still in the game, by the way, rebuilding. Like he's still crushing.
I guess if you've done it once, painful lesson, but you know how to build it back up. I'm a pretty big follower of Ryan Pineda, and that's the exact same thing. Like he was in Las Vegas doing almost exclusively flipping, probably was doing close to 100 deals a year. And that dude just got totally wiped out. And he was like, yeah, I'm only wholesaling now, literally just because of risk. Like the problem, the one thing I don't like about scaled fix and flip operations and why I personally don't ever see myself doing more than like one or two at a time. It's because, man, you're sitting on debt that has a really short time frame. So you can't wait for rates to change. You can't wait for the market to change. It's like, okay, let's say you have 10 flips out there at one time. If the market changes, you either have to be able to sell for a loss. And if you're doing like the Kiavi 100 financing, it's like, dude, you have no skin in the game. Like you eat that entire cost and all the extra interest that you're paying on the deal.
Here's the only caveat to that though. If you're flipping in a Midwestern market where you have a legitimate exit strategy, keeps you under 75% LTV, and you can pretty much refinance anything under 75% LTV and have positive, like a DSCR 1.25 or above.
Yep. Agreed. 100%.
Like that's big time risk adjusted in the Midwest. You could flip 300 houses a year and be perfectly fine. If the market tanks, when I say tank, the interest rates go up, I don't mean like values in the Midwest don't drop 50%. Like that's not a thing. Even in the crash of 2008, that's not what happened.
Dude, in the crash of 2008, man, I think it was like shortly after that my parents were trying to buy a house in Michigan and there was nothing on the market, the Midwest is so isolated.
It's so even. It doesn't have big appreciation swings. It also doesn't lose a bunch of value. So, and because it's right around that 100 to 250K mark, median price point, those and rents have gone up exponentially over the last decade. You're talking $1,500 plus anywhere. So if you're flipping 300 houses a year, you're in the Midwest, and there's some type of correction or problem. Like there's never something bad can always happen. Some black swan can always happen. Like if you were in Detroit, Michigan, when 2008 happened, like the recession wasn't even the problem. There was that the only industry where everybody worked collapsed. It was the automotive industry. And it wasn't just working at Ford or GM or whatever. It was all the secondary jobs, the factory jobs that created the steel or did this for the motor industry. So it wasn't so much that, the recession happened, the economy went down nationwide. It was in Michigan, there was a black swan event where their primary employer took a dump. Everybody lost their jobs. Unemployment was through the roof, which means foreclosures were happening and all that. So it wasn't like the property value just went down. That's not what happened.
Right.
But I do think that's like another, like when you talk about stacking risk, you're like, okay, hey, there's risk if I do 300 flips on smaller margins because I only have one flip exit strategy. But if I have, I can always refinance this, have little to no money in it, and it's got a 1.25 or greater DSCR.
Yes. Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, like, can I live with that? Yeah, I'll just have to be a landlord.
Dude, here's the thing too. That's honestly a really, really great point. Two things to add on to that. One, that's why if you're doing deals and you want to mitigate risk, you should be asking your lender like, hey, worst case scenario, I have to refinance this. What does this look like before you buy the flip? Because I have probably a third of my borrowers that I funded this year in Tampa went ahead and refied their flips because they couldn't get the price they wanted. But here's point number two that a lot of people don't realize. All right. So you don't want to be a landlord, especially not with a bunch of houses, right? You weren't really planning on it. You don't have the business for it. You don't like it, which I don't blame you. I'm not really a big fan of single family rentals.
Oh, I love them.
I think that sounds like a headache, dude. But regardless.
Spend like an hour a month on them.
Here's the thing though. If you refi, it's like, you know what you would have had to pay if you flipped it this year? Short-term capital gains. You know what happens if you just sit on it for a year, wait for things to chill out and then sell it then? Yeah, you probably paid 5 to 10 grand in extra closing costs, the refinance it and points and everything. Like, dude, if you can say it's long-term capital gains and you way cut down that tax basis and like worst case scenario, like you might end up making more money on it and hopefully you cash flowed that year you owned it if that's what you want to do. So yeah, you want to talk about mitigating risk, like there you go, man. Make sure you've got more than one exit on your flip.
For sure. I'm learning this painful lesson. I think I talked about this on here before. I got a lead. I'm in the Panhandle. It's kind of where we were born. Get a lead just over the border in Alabama. My acquisitions rep, Wendy, who I love dearly, says this is a great deal. Like he wants $295 for it. I think the ARV is like $420, $415. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's try to wholesale it. We didn't do a good job trying to like find buyers in that area. And we're like, it's a good deal. So we bought it. It only needs $40K of work. Well, it needed $80K because it needed a new septic. Man. And it was on a canal and it was unique and there was no data. The main city's up here. This property's down here on a canal, 20 minutes out of the main city, not even in city limits. Right? And none of the data is right here, but all the data up here is going 500K plus everything. Nothing's selling under 500K. So like
in Alabama,
Fairhope.
Wow.
Really cool, great little eclectic city. So anyways, we do this crappy lipstick flip, try to sell it. Started at 460, which the agent thought it was worth because everything was selling over 500, even though we underwrote it at like 415. Go a year, price drop from 460 all the way down to 360 over 12 months.
Gosh.
By the way, I'm in this thing at this point for at least 400K. Lenders, everything.
Dang, bro.
End up refinancing it, put a 325K loan on it, which means this is all private money, by the way, which means I had to stroke 90K worth of check to close this property. So do that. And it still needs things. I'm just like, I try to long-term rent it. Like my mortgage on it, because insurance and taxes are high, $3,200. I try to rent it for $2,250. It's like slow go at best. It's kind of like off the beaten path. So I'm like, you know what? Start looking at the Airbnb market.
I was just going to ask if this is the house.
I got my own appraisal. And then we got it appraised for the refinance. Appraised at 408. That's 80 grand, 90 grand of equity. I'm like, you know what? Let me just hold on to that equity. I don't want to give it away. And everybody else like, just write it off. It's a headache. I'm like, yeah, I'm just stubborn, man. So long-term rentals are not going to really work for this thing. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm going all in. I'm not going to spare an expense. I'm going to fix this, make this back deck super dope. I'm going to put a hot tub on this sucker. Got a Pac-Man video game. I have a ping pong. I'm going to go foosball. I'm going the whole. This thing will be so attractive. You look in the city of Fairhope, Alabama. At the very least, you will have to say, ooh, should we do this one? At the very least.
Sexy.
So, and that's the process I'm going through right now. But hey, that was a flip gone bad.
There you go. I mean, hopefully it ends up being a nice exit. And that is one thing I will say about Airbnbs. Like, I feel like people try to kind of do it cheap. It's like, no, dude, if you go Airbnb, you got to make that thing baller because the marginal benefit on spending an extra, $10 10, 20K on those finishes, you increase your revenue so much. And you get a different renter pool. Like,
there was some floor stuff in there. I'd already paid to have some of the flooring done. The agent's like, just leave this other flooring. It's fine. I got somebody going out next week to replace it all. Like, they had old crappy garage doors. I put brand new garage, brand new, $5,000. Boom, put them on there. Wi-Fi, got video. I'm going to make the garage super sweet.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Like, you have to. I mean, it's like, if you want to, because like Airbnb is all about the pizzazz. It's all about oh my gosh, it's got a hot tub. Oh my gosh, it's got a Pac-Man game and foosball. Like, that would be so cool for the kids. We could sit in the hot tub. They could play the games.
Yeah. Well, you can confirm this because I'm not married and I'm not going to pretend to know anything about women. But if I think about who's booking the Airbnb, I think it's probably the wife.
Wife.
Yeah.
100%. Yep. Absolutely. So, dude, this has been an awesome podcast, man. We kind of just got into hanging out for 40 minutes, but that's cool. I appreciate your time. Jared Prevost at Rain City Capital. So people in Tampa listening to this, or in Florida, they want a hard money loan. What's the benefit of using you over somebody else?
I don't ever like to talk about terms. I think I probably can smoke most lenders when it comes to term, closing time, all that stuff. But that's about Rain City. That's not about Jared Prevost. And who I sell is myself. So really, like, the advantage of working with a guy like myself, I know this market like the back of my hands. I'm not going to lend to you unless I actually legitimately believe that you're going to win on the deal. I do say no a lot. And I regularly hook people up with deals that they would have never gotten unless I was like, hey, this is a borrower of mine. They're solid. Let me put it in front of them. So those would be, I think, 3 reasons that kind of make it a no-brainer if you're doing deals, especially in Tampa Bay, but in Florida in general.
If somebody's like, yep, I need that guy on my list of lenders, how do they get a hold of you?
Best way is Instagram. So if you'll never forget what I do, because my handle is Jared Does Hard Money and I post every single day. So that would be the place to find me. That's actually where I get most of my deals, is people just messaging me on Instagram. Or Facebook as well. But Instagram is the spot I hang out with, or I hang out. And if you want to, hang out with me, get to know me, that's the place I'd recommend you go.
Jared Does Hard Money on Instagram. All right, man. Well, go check Jared out. Thanks for listening today. If you found value, which I know you're finding value in these things because we're bringing on awesome people, do me a favor. Go give me a review. Ideally, it's 5 stars, but just be honest, honestly. And if you have a topic or somebody that you think I should be bringing on from Florida, let me know. I'll go get them. We'll bring them on and we'll try to provide more value. So if you can, just go leave us a 5-star review. We'd be eternally grateful. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks, Jared, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.